Good afternoon. My name is Ronnie Holder-Diefenbach, and I am the Executive Director for the Economic Alliance, and I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar. We are going to go ahead and start right at 2 o'clock today, just because we have a lot of information that we're going to pile into this time period. I would like to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers who can go ahead and introduce themselves, and we'll start with Reed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Reed Simock. I am the Youth Employment Specialist with the Department of Labor and Industries. So I oversee the investigations into alleged child labor violations, and I have been in the role for approximately a year and been investigating cases since 2019.
Thank you, Reed. And now I'll turn it over to Stephanie to introduce herself.
So, hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Aguilar and I'm the Youth Job Trainer Counselor here at Worksource Okanogan. And I have been in my role for about 6 months now.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're going to go ahead and I'm just going to give a brief overview of the Economic Alliance before we get started, just to kind of give information about who we are, our programs, and why we came about partnering with both L&I and Worksource to put this training on. The Economic Alliance is the Economic Development Association for Okanogan County, and we are designated by the county commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners. And we also are the Small Business Development Center, and we offer free confidential small business services, as well as the Okanogan County Tourism Council. So we work with a lot of our small businesses throughout the county, as well as our communities and other organizations that provide services like Worksource to the businesses within the county and the region, actually. And youth employment has been a huge topic of conversation. I was chatting with Reed before this meeting, talking about how many of our local businesses would really like to hire youth, but they think regulations and all of these things that are a challenge. And so that's why we've invited Reed and Stephanie here today to give us an overview and provide us with those resources and step us through the process of how a small business can hire a person under the age of 18 and help them develop that work ethic and those work experiences that they need in order to move forward as an adult. So enough about me and about what we do. I'll go ahead and turn it over to who you want to actually hear, and that's Reed and Stephanie. So I will turn it over to Reed, and he will be our first presenter.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. I will share my screen for a presentation. And if I could just get confirmation that you can see it. Okay. So thanks, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Reed Simock. I'm the Youth Employment Specialist with the Department of Labor and Industries. And today I'm going to go over some of the rules that employers need to follow when they're hiring minors in Washington. So when I talk about minors, I really mean anybody that is under the age of 18. And Washington's youth employment rules cover all minors in the state. And the rules are designed to make sure that minors are working in safe environments and that their work isn't negatively impacting their schooling. So to further this aim, our rules touch on 4 main areas of employment. So the first is documents that are required to hire minors. So what kind of forms employers need to have on file when hiring minors. Hours of work limitations for minors. So basically how long they can work and when they can work. Break requirements. So how frequently they need their breaks and how long those have to be. And then finally, prohibited duties, which are jobs that are considered too dangerous for minors to engage in. And I'll go over each of these areas in more depth during this presentation. Another thing to note is that Washington does have separate rules for agricultural and non-agricultural employment for minors. So they are two completely different sets of rules with not a whole lot of overlap. But we see the majority of minors are working in non-agricultural industries. So this presentation is going to focus on that. So Washington's youth employment rules, as I mentioned, cover all minors in Washington. And unfortunately, that includes parents that are hiring their own children. Just the way that our rules are written, we don't have an exemption for parents that are hiring their children. So they would just have to follow the same rules as if they were hiring any other minor. Lastly, the legal age to work is 14. It is possible to hire someone that's under the age of 14, but doing so requires getting a signed authorization form from a superior court judge in the county that the minor lives in. And that form is available on L&I's website. And the employer would just need to reach out and contact the court for their particular procedures. So when a company is looking to hire a minor, it's important that they get 3 documents on file before the minor actually starts working. And the first document that they need is what's called a minor work permit. And a minor work permit is very basically just an endorsement that's on their business license, saying that the company has been approved to go ahead and hire minors. The business license application is operated through the Department of Revenue. So if an employer is interested in getting a minor work permit, they would go through the Department of Revenue's business licensing service. And then what they will do is batch up all of the applications and send them to us, and we review them the next day. These permits are important because they're one of the ways that we can be proactive and make sure that minors aren't working in dangerous situations before an injury occurs. A couple of things to keep in mind with the minor work permit is that one, it covers all minors at a location, but if an employer has multiple locations, then they would need to get a separate minor work permit for each location. Secondly, the permit does expire, so it does have to be renewed annually. The second document that employers need is simply a parent authorization for each minor. So the most common authorization is called the parent school authorization form. This is a simple 3-page PDF document that employers can download from L&I's website and fill it out. And the goal of this document is to make sure that employers, the minor, and then the minor's parent and the minor's school are all on the same page when it comes to the job duties that the minor will be performing, as well as their hours. On the parent school authorization form, the second page actually allows parents and schools to adjust the minor's hours of work. So they can actually set it below the maximum allowed hours, which I'll get into a little bit later. But the important thing here is if a parent or a school sets those hours below the maximum, then the employer would need to follow those lowered hours. Like the minor work permits, the parent school authorization form does expire. So it has to be renewed at the beginning of every school year. So by September 30th, an employer would just need to get the document filled out again for the new school year. But once an employer has that signed for the school year, it covers that year and then the following summer. Now, if an employer is just hiring a minor during the summer, there is a separate form. It's called the parent authorization for summer work. It's basically the same thing. It's just missing that school signature portion. And that covers just the summer hours. If an employer does end up hiring a minor in the summer and then continues that employment into the school year, then they would need to get that parent school authorization form, that school version, signed and filled out. But like I said earlier, that covers the following summer. So once you make that switch, you don't have to keep going back and forth. That school authorization form will cover you from there on. The last document that employers need to have is simply a proof of age for minors. This is really important because there are the separate rules for anyone that's under the age of 18. But also there are different rules, especially when we're talking about hours of work, breaks, prohibited duties, that apply to 14 and 15-year-olds and then 16 and 17-year-olds. So it's important that an employer knows exactly how old a minor is when they're hiring them. And there are a couple of different forms for proof of age that are acceptable. So it could be some government issued ID, like a driver's license, a passport, but it could also be a birth certificate or a notarized statement from a parent or guardian. Unfortunately, there are some common documents out there that are not valid proof of age, and those include I-9 forms and then school IDs. And with school IDs, they typically don't have that date of birth, which is why they're not considered valid. Once an employer has the three documents, the permit, parent authorization, and then the proof of age, then they can go ahead and hire the minor and schedule them to start work. But when doing that, employers do need to be aware that there are separate hours of work that can determine how many hours a minor can work. And there are two factors that change the allowable hours for a minor. So the first is the age. So younger minors, those that are under the age of 16, can typically work shorter hours compared with older minors. So those that are 16 and 17 years old. Secondly, whether or not school is in session also changes the hours that minors can work. And a school week is simply defined as any week where the minors are receiving instruction. So we have spring break coming up where the minors have an entire week off because they aren't receiving instruction that week. That's considered a non-school week. So they can work the same hours as they could during a summer vacation or a winter break. In other situations, say Thanksgiving break, where the minors have a couple of days of school, but a couple of days off as well, because they are receiving instruction for a couple of days that week, that entire week would be considered a school week. And so they would have to follow the school week hours. A couple of other things to note is that minors cannot work during school hours, and that all of the hours of work restrictions apply to all minors. So that includes if minors are homeschooled, not enrolled in school, are taking online classes, they still have to follow the school week hours of work restrictions, and then they would still not be able to work during the hours that their neighborhood school is in session. So here's a chart showing the different hours that minors can work in different situations. As you can see, the younger minors have lower hours compared with the older minors, and then the hours are reduced during the school year. So for 14 and 15-year-olds, on school days, they can work up to 3 hours a day. And then on non-school days, so Saturday and Sunday, they can work 8 hours a day, but they are capped at working 16 hours per week, up to 6 days a week. And then there's a timing requirement as well. So they have to start work after 7 a.m. and end before 7 p.m. during school weeks. For non-school weeks, minors that are under the age of 16 can just work 8 hours a day, 48 hours a week, up to 6 days a week. And then they have to still start work after 7 a.m. But during the summer, so from June 1st until Labor Day, and they can work until 9 p.m. If it's a non-school week during the school year, so things winter break or spring break, they would still have to end work by 7 p.m. For the older minors, the 16 to 17-year-olds, the base hours that they can work during school weeks is 4 hours a day on school days that precede another school day. So typically that's going to be your Monday through Thursday. And then on the remaining days, so typically your Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they can work up to 8 hours per day. But they're capped at working 20 hours per week, again, 6 days per week. And then they'd have to start work after 7 a.m., even on the weekends, and then end work by 10 p.m. if they have school the next day, or midnight if they don't. Now, when I say that that's just the baseline, there are a couple of ways for minors in this age group to work extra hours during the school year and during school weeks. And I'll go over some of those ways in more detail on the next slide. But for right now, one option to be aware of is what's called a special variance. And again, I'll kind of explain the process for getting this special variance on the next slide. But the big takeaway here is that they can work 2 additional hours during the week. So from 4 hours to 6 hours, and then 8 additional hours per week. But that the start and stop times and then the 8-hour cap on the weekends remains in effect. During non-school weeks, 16 to 17-year-olds can just work a flat 8 hours a day, 48 hours per week, up to 6 days per week, and then anywhere from 5 a.m. until midnight. So I mentioned that there are a couple of ways that minors that are 16 and 17 years old may work some extra hours during the school year. And by far the most common way is through this special variance process. So when minors in this age group are filling out the parent school authorization form, there's a box that's at the bottom of the last page. It's a little gray box that says optional special variance for school year for 16, 17-year-olds. And the upside is if that is signed by the minor's parent and the minor's school, then they can just automatically work those extra hours, the 2 hours per school day, and then 8 hours, extra 8 hours per week. Because the special variance does require that school signature in addition to that parent signature, it is only available to minors that are enrolled in public or private school. So if a minor is not enrolled in school or is homeschooled, unfortunately, this particular avenue to work extra hours wouldn't be open to them, but there is alternatives that they could use. And I'll cover that on the next slide. The other way that minors can work additional hours during the school year is if they meet an exemption. So there are a couple of different options. So, they could be married or a parent or enrolled in college courses such as a Running Start program. And if that's the case, then they can automatically work the non-school week hours year-round. So that means that they could work those 8 hours a day, 48 hours a week, and they wouldn't have to submit anything to L&I. The employer would just need to make sure that they have some sort of documentation showing that the minor meets one of those exemption conditions. So it could be a copy of their birth certificate or a marriage certificate, or even just a transcript showing that the minors are enrolled in courses for that semester or quarter. The last way that minors can work additional hours is also the broadest, and that's through what's called a minor work variance. And a variance very basically is a waiver for certain hours of work rules. So this is a little bit more involved than either the special variance or the exemption, where the big benefit of both of those is that they're automatic. As long as it's signed or that the minor can show that they meets one of the conditions, they can automatically work those extra hours. With a variance, it does require the employer to fill out a separate form and then submit it to L&I for approval. So the employer can download the variance application from L&I's website. It's a pretty simple form, just front and back, one page. And it mostly asks for pretty basic information on the minor, just their name, age, and then employer information. So location, UBI, things of that nature. The form also provides space for the employer to explain the minor's job duties, but then also to explain what particular reasons they're requesting to have the minor work extra hours. We do review variance applications on a case-by-case basis, and that there does have to be a good cause reason for requesting and approving a variance. But examples of that could be that the minor is homeschooled or not enrolled in school, and so they have the capacity to work additional hours. On the back side of the page, there's actually a spot for the employer to list out the exact hours that they are requesting for the minor. So how many hours per day, how many hours per week, and then their preferred start and stop time. To finish the application, employers simply need to scan it and then email it to teensafety@lni.wa.gov. And a copy of that email address is actually at the top of the form. The variance application, when we receive it, we, like I said, review them on a case-by-case basis. If we have questions, we'll reach out to the employer. But if we approve a variance, we will provide the employer with an approval document that will outline the specific hours that individual minor is able to work. One thing to note with the variance is that there is a duration for them. So they are not open-ended, and we can only approve them up until the end of the minor work permit. So if you have a minor work permit and it expires and you have a variance too, you'll want to make sure that you're renewing both at the same time so that the variance doesn't accidentally lapse and then you're working the minor over the allowed hours. When minors are working, employers also need to be aware that there are certain requirements for them to receive breaks. And like with the hours, these break requirements are dependent on the age of the minor, with slightly different requirements for those under the age of 16 and those over the age. So for 16, 17-year-olds, they are required to receive a 30-minute meal break when they're working shifts longer than 5 hours. For minors that are under 16, they have to receive that 30-minute meal break when they're working shifts that are longer than 4 hours. And with this break, it can be unpaid, so employers don't have to pay for meal breaks, but they have to be uninterrupted. So a minor couldn't split their meal break, say, into two 15-minute chunks. It has to be one continuous 30-minute period. For the older minors, the 16, 17-year-olds, there is a timing requirement for the breaks as well. So they have to receive the meal break after the 2nd hour, but before the 5th hour of their shift. So there's a 3-hour window where they have to get that break. So for example, if a minor is scheduled for a 6-hour shift from noon until 6 p.m., they would need to get their breaks, meal break, somewhere in the window between 2 and 5 p.m. But we do recommend that they get that meal break kind of as close to the middle of the shift as possible. One last thing to note with meal breaks is just the way that our rules are written. Minors cannot waive their breaks, unlike adults. So if they're working longer than 4 hours or longer than 5 hours, they have to receive that meal break. For rest breaks, the requirements are a little bit more straightforward. So they do have to be separate and in addition to meal breaks. And the rest breaks have to be a paid 10-minute period when the minors are working shifts that are longer than 4 hours. And we recommend that the rest breaks come near the middle of each 4-hour period. So if a minor was working from noon until 4, we recommend that they have that rest break at about 2 p.m. So a final thing for employers to be aware of when hiring minors is that there are certain jobs and certain tools and equipment that are too dangerous for minors to use or engage in. And like with the rest breaks and the hours, the requirements do vary depending on the age. So Washington has 30 prohibited duties that apply to all minors, regardless of how old they are. And then there's an additional 8 that apply just to those that are under the age of 16. Focusing on those that apply to all minors, the prohibited duties are, broadly speaking, kind of broken down into 2 categories. So the first deal with entire industries where it doesn't matter the particular job duties that the minor is responsible for. If they're working in that industry, it would be prohibited. So examples are logging or brick production or roofing. And the roofing prohibition is actually a federal rule, and it's a really broad prohibition. So it includes even minors that are helping out from the ground. As long as there are roofing activities going on, they would be unable to work in that environment. The second group of prohibited duties is those that are focused on particular job duties or particular tools, and regardless of the industry that is being operated in. So examples of that include using power-driven woodworking equipment. This is another federal rule that has a really broad interpretation. So when you hear about power-driven woodworking equipment, you think of things like bandsaws or table saws. But really it means anything that has an on-off button and is being used on wood. So obviously the bandsaws, table saws, those would be prohibited under this rule. But it also includes things like handheld drills or like belt sanders. They would still have to be 18 in order to use those. Minors are also prohibited from working in occupations that require the use of personal protective equipment beyond those that are just boots, gloves, or eye protection. If that's the boots, gloves, or eye protection, all that's necessary, then they would be able to use it. Provided they aren't using some other type of prohibited equipment, like a power-driven woodworking machine. But if it requires other protection, such as a respirator, then they would have to be 18 to do that job as well. For retail establishments, minors can work past 8 p.m., but if they are doing so, they need to have adult supervision on the premise at all times. They can't work past 8 p.m. alone. And additionally, they can't work more than 10 feet off the ground or floor level. Now, there are a couple of additional restrictions for those that are under the age of 16. So those include cooking and baking. Again, these are federal guidelines, and so they have a very broad interpretation of baking. And so it includes anything in the baking process, including helping to weigh and measure ingredients prior to mixing or actually putting it in the oven. Minors that are under the age of 16 are also prohibited from using power-driven machinery, with the exception of things like office equipment. But anything outside of that, so like a golf cart, lawnmower, weed whacker, leaf blower, they would have to be 16 in order to operate. And finally, minors under the age of 16 are prohibited from working at construction. This is one of those kind of broader industry-based prohibited duties. So it doesn't matter if the minors are just working as a gopher or helping to haul materials or clean up. They would have to be 16 in order to go to a construction site. We get a lot of questions about whether or not there are educational programs for minors and whether there are special rules for minors that are enrolled in educational programs. And the answer is yes, there are both programs and special rules for minors enrolled in them. So one of the more popular types of educational programs is unpaid internships, and minors can work in unpaid internships. But it is important to keep in mind that for an internship to be unpaid, the primary individual to benefit from that relationship has to be the minor. If the employer is the one that is primarily benefiting from the relationship, then the minor would be considered an employee, and all of the rules that I just mentioned would come into effect. But if the minor is an unpaid intern, is not doing work that is benefiting the business, then they would not be subject to the youth employment rules, as they are not considered an employee. If the minor is in a paid position, so if they are enrolled in a paid internship, at that point, they would just be considered an employee and would be treated the same as any other minor employee. And so all of the youth employment rules that I just went over would be in effect again. L&I also has special rules for what we call student learners. And student learners are comprised of 16 to 17-year-olds that are in one of two programs. So the first is a paid worksite learning program. And what this is basically a program that has been set up by OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And it involves minors working for an employer, but receiving school credit for the work that they're getting. If the employer is working with a school district and gets that set up, then there are special rules kind of governing the hours that the minor can work, where they can work slightly longer hours compared with minors that are not enrolled in a program. And then minors can use certain prohibited tools as well. The other half for student learners is minors that are enrolled in registered apprenticeship programs. And to be a registered apprenticeship, it has to be recognized by the Washington State Apprenticeship and Training Council. So if a minor is enrolled in a student learner program, either paid worksite learning or a registered apprenticeship, there are special rules that kind of govern the prohibited duties that the minors are subject to. And so they are actually able to, in limited circumstances, use certain tools and equipment and work in certain industries that would otherwise be prohibited for minors. If that's something that a business is interested, if they're interested in setting up a registered apprenticeship, I would recommend that they reach out to the Apprenticeship and Training Council, and then working with the school or local school district in order to set up a paid worksite learning program. Are there any questions?
Don't everybody just ask all at once. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to add them to the chat. I did have a couple questions, Reed. One was in regards to ag-related work. And I know that you said that in the beginning that your presentation today was not going to address that, but we do have a lot of folks who run farms and ranches and orchards and those types of things out here in Okanogan County, and actually throughout our entire region. And if a business was interested in learning those rules and regulations, would they be able to call you to talk to you directly, or is there a special person that they would be sent to talk about the ag-related guidelines to hiring youth?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me directly. I oversee that part as well.
Okay, great. And then the other question that I have is, Lou Blakeney just asked a question. Does L&I have a handout for businesses with these guidelines on it that we can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's our Teens at Work brochure, gives a really high level overview of all of the different steps for hiring minors and things that employers need to be aware of. And that's available on L&I's website. So if you just search for Teens at Work, you'll be able to find it there. I can also follow up with an email too, if that's something that you're interested in.
And all of the L&I documents we have printed off, and we will make sure that we have this document printed off and available to any business at the Economic Alliance office in Okanogan. So we have been trying to be a clearinghouse for as many L&I materials as possible, just to make sure that businesses who are interested or organizations that work with businesses have access to that information. So we do have a lot of those documents already, but L&I has done a great job of making them printable as well directly off of their website. The other question that I had, Reed, was in regards to the introduction of some new legislation in this last during the current process right now. There's been actually one of our local legislators had presented a bill to that allows minors to be able to work in the construction industry or entering into apprenticeship programs while in high school.
Mhm.
How would that impact, the guidelines that you shared with us today?
Yeah, so it depends on the kind of particular program that the minor would end up enrolling in. If it's a pre-apprenticeship program through the high school, um, the employer would still need to follow the same requirements as far as the documents to hire minors. So that's a constant across both minors that are not enrolled in a apprenticeship or worksite learning program and those that are. And it's also a constant between agricultural and non-agricultural work. So that's kind of a baseline. Secondly, they would need to follow the same requirements for hours of work and for breaks. That those would also be the same if they're in a pre-apprenticeship program. Uh, what is slightly different is the types of jobs that minors can do and certain prohibited duties that they would be able to work in. So there are 8 different exemptions for student learners. Again, those that are enrolled in pre-apprenticeship or paid worksite learning programs through their school. And those cover, power-driven woodworking equipment. They cover using saws, so power-driven saws like band saws or circular saws. They also cover working in excavation, roofing, and then some other job duties such as firefighting and like meat packing. But if an employer is in an industry where those particular prohibited duties are common, they can apply for what's called a student learner variance. And that covers just the minors that are enrolled in a student learner program. But if the employer checks off those particular prohibited duties and then provides a list with the make and model of the specific tools or equipment that they would like the minor to use, then the minors can use that tool or equipment in kind of an educational, limited capacity on the job, as long as it's tied to their learning objectives. We review all of those, much like with other variances. They are a separate form that employers would have to fill out and send in. But it does give them some flexibility to be able to show minors how to operate certain tools and equipment that they normally wouldn't otherwise be able to use.
Thank you for the answer. I think that helps a lot. If you could go ahead, I don't know if you have your final slide has your contact information on it, but if it doesn't, oh, great. If we can copy that and put that in the chat as well, just so that people can have access to that at their fingertips to maybe copy and paste it. Thank you so much. I think we learned a lot from your presentation today, and I think a lot of businesses within our area will definitely benefit from learning more about this and learning more about the steps that they need to take in order to get those variances and go through the process, especially if there's individuals who might want to work a couple extra hours. That was a big thing that I didn't realize is, all they had to do was check that box when they were filling out the parent and the school form, so if they knew that ahead of time when they're filling it out, or if we're helping somebody do that, then that could allow them to get more hours if they wanted to work additional time. So thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move right into Stephanie's presentation. If you could, there you go. Stephanie, you're up.
Okay, let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so as I said previously, I'm Stephanie, the youth job trainer for the Learning Center house here in Worksource Okanogan. So the Learning Center helps youth with academic achievements such as obtaining their GED or their state diploma. And in order to receive services, youth first sign up for the Youth ACE orientation, which is a 2-day workshop where information is provided regarding our learning center, qualifications for eligibility, and we also administer tests. And these tests don't determine whether you're eligible or not. We just want to see at what reading and math level they're at. In addition of our learning center, we help youth gain valuable work skills and transferable skills by assisting in work experiences and internships. And how we do this is we work with employers around our community for placement, and before placement occurs, we talk to employers to make sure it is a good fit for both the employer and the youth. We check to see if they have a minor work permit and if they're willing to sponsor the youth. We also assist employers along the way if there are any concerns. In order to determine eligibility, we ask them a couple questions before we sign them up for the orientation. So we ask if they have an IEP and if or which school they last attended. And after we get those questions, they'll attend our orientation. And after the 2-day orientation, we will set up a one-on-one intake where I will get more information about the youth and what their academic goals are, what their long-term goals are, what their short-term goals are, if they're interested in post-secondary education, or if they're interested in gaining work maturity skills. And after I receive all the documentation required, I will go over all the paperwork, put together their file, and determine if they're eligible or not for our program. After that has been determined, then I'll go ahead. If they're looking to get their GED or their diploma, they will attend our learning center. They'll meet with our instructor, Linda, and then Linda will see if whether they're looking to get their state diploma, which still requires 24 credits, or if they want to get their GED. Linda will prepare them. She'll further prepare them so she'll give them weekly assignments. If they're getting their GED, she'll give them assignments. And once she determines that they're eligible to take the test for the GED, she'll go ahead and provide them with those tests. And after they're all set up in the learning center, I'll reach out to them to see if they need other support services or if they need anything else that I can help them with. And once they're ready to do a work experience, I'll go talk to employers around our community, and I ask the youth what their interests are, and the career scope also helps determine their interests, and I will also go based off of that. And once I know, then I'll talk to the employers and I'll set them up. I'll have the employer meet our youth, and if it's a good fit, I'll write up a contract, and the employer will begin their work experience, which is usually 100 hours. Following a work experience, they can also do an internship, which is also 100 hours. So the difference between a WEX and an internship is that after the internship is completed, the employer hires them for half of the hours of the internship, and then the employer will determine if they want to keep that youth for a permanent position. And all of this should prepare the youth with work maturity readiness. Worksource also provides other workshops where they can learn how to do a resume, how to interview. And so what is WIOA? So WIOA stands for Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Acts. WIOA is designed to help job seekers, youth find employment by providing vocational scholarships, on the job training, work experiences, and support services to eligible participants. So you may be eligible for WIOA services if you meet the following requirements, which are if your parent or anyone in your household receives food benefits, or if they're low income, or if the youth is a high school dropout, they automatically qualify for the youth program. If they haven't been attending any school, if they are basic skills deficient. So all of this is determined during the intake. And we also have the Worksource website. Can you guys see it? Okay, so on this website here, a youth can go on here and create an account, and they have a lot of options that they can do. So they have a dashboard, they can put a schedule on here, they can upload their resume where potential employers can pull that out. They can also create a cover letter, and they can see the jobs that they have applied for and save jobs. And they can also, in this tab here, they can look up a place. So let's say that they look up OMAC and they want to find a job here. So they would just search, and all the jobs around our area will come out and they can apply. Our program also provides support services. So if they need money for us, or if they need a support service to buy clothes for an interview, we can provide them with that. Or if they need gas vouchers, we can also provide them with that. If they need tuition assistance, we're also able to provide assistance. Does anybody have any questions?
How would they contact you, Stephanie, if they wanted to get a hold of you or somebody in the youth program?
So if they wanted to get a hold of me, they can call the Worksource office and they can transfer them to me, or they can show up to the office and ask for me, and I'll usually go talk to them. I also have my number and my email, which I can provide here in the chat.
That would be great. If anybody has any questions for Stephanie, please add them in the chat as well. A couple questions for you. So you talked a lot about the services that you provide to the youth, which is one of the things that we wanted is to know what those resources are. But if a business is interested in hiring youth and they don't know where to go, can they also come to you, and will you help them fill out those documents? Maybe the application to become do the minor work permit and those types of things, so that they can get their business ready to hire young people?
So yes, I believe we can assist employers with the minor work permit.
Okay, and in the youth program, I know that their program is a little bit different than maybe the state's definition of minor, meaning under the age of 18. What is the ages that a person can qualify for to be eligible for the youth program? Sorry.
Yeah, so to be eligible for the youth program, usually ages 16 through 24.
Okay, so somebody who has been out of the high school, they can still come to you guys and receive those youth services.
Yes, if they meet the eligibility requirements.
Okay. And then another question, I seen that when you were looking at your website, and you were stepping through the process of being able to, get on and look at the jobs that are currently available. If a youth is looking for work, are they able to go to that site and identify employers that hire youth or already have a minor work permit in place?
For that, I'm not quite sure if a job will tell you if they have a minor work permit, but I believe it does. Some employers do put the age.
Okay. All right. I think that was all the questions that I had. But if you could go ahead and add your contact information into the chat, that would be great. So that people know, the phone number to Worksource, and to know that you guys have specific programs that are out there that is available to both employers and to the minors and the youth ages up to 24 in our community. I think that's extremely valuable resources to have. And we know, as I think we know that we have limited resources, and so being able to understand what is available and what is out there is super important. And especially when we can make that connection, if we're out there dealing with businesses and we're working with business, that they know that they can contact Worksource and get that additional assistance to help them through that process. Because I think more and more employers and businesses that I'm speaking to and working with are Stephanie, can you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you. They're going looking outside of the box from their traditional ways of doing business and hiring people, and they know that our young people are going to be the ones that we're going to have to go to. They're, our upcoming workforce, there are upcoming leaders, and we need to again try to do whatever we can to make it so that we can make sure that they're connected to the resources that are out there to get them into the workplace and help those businesses along the way. Is there any additional questions or comments for anybody in the webinar?
So I did also want to mention that we also provide services to those who are in high school. So in high school youth, we can also provide services to them. And if they already graduated high school or already have a GED, we can also provide services to them. You don't have to, or we do not only provide services to those who don't have GEDs and diplomas.
That's great information. Thank you so much. Again, this is one of, as we move forward, the Economic Alliance is going to continue to hold different webinars and workshops. Donna, did you have a comment?
I would just like to get 2 regular hamburgers and a small Coke.
Donna?
Complete order?
Donna.
I'm sorry, what?
Is that complete order?
That's it.
Did you have a question or a comment? Or you wanted a hamburger too?
Yeah.
I want one too. Anyways, this is going to be a continued, the Economic Alliance is going to offer additional workshops as we move forward. We go out, we meet with businesses, we work with businesses, we find out different things. I'm on the North Central Washington Career Connect team, as well as the chair for the North Central Washington Workforce Development Board. And all of us, have been focused on addressing youth employment. Again, we have some significant gaps, and we talk about work ethic and work experience and all these different things. And I think that this is where we can start and help connect these businesses to these youth and minors that need the opportunity to have that work experience. So again, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Reed. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And just real fast, the Economic Alliance, if you're interested in contacting us about services or to meet with Lou, our small business advisor through the Small Business Development Center, you can contact us at 509-826-5107. So again, thank you guys, and thank you to our 2 speakers for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this meeting today. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great job.